Welcome everyone to another edition of Get Your Game On, the channel dedicated to immersive gaming experiences. So I have something a little different for everyone today. As you may or may not know, we do live streaming of some of our favorite gaming titles once or twice a week. And an interesting thing happened a couple weeks ago when Jeff Weaver, who you may know on the channel is the Sim Racing Studios tuning guru, tuning crew chief. Basically, he's the expert at making the profiles that make the motion platform move. He joined us for a little 7 Days to Die, and one of my subscribers, Know Your Joe, jumped on right at the end of the stream and opened up a whole can of worms when he started asking us about which motion platform was right for him. And what followed was a very candid, unscripted discussion that Jeff and I had, talking about the various motion platforms and what might be right for certain applications, what's right for other people. Now, because that's buried in a 3-hour gaming stream, I thought, well, there's a lot of my viewers that probably aren't going to see it. But there's such good information in there that I thought I needed to pull it out and share it with you all in case some of you are wondering, okay, how do I know which motion platform I should get for myself? So, here you go. Without any further ado, enjoy. Okay, we got this clown over here. Nice. Made him bleed out. Okay, back to what we were talking about before it's really interrupted.
Okay.
So it comes down to what's your...
H3 versus, say, H6 for flight sims. Yes, it comes down to, what is your budget and what are you expecting?
Well, yeah, budget
and
is
flight
a big
sims, yeah, going from an H3 or going from my P3 to a P6, I will admit I was a little disappointed in the reduction of pitch and roll, specifically for the flight sims.
Okay.
That the H3 has a lot more of that.
Right.
So I was missing some of those kind of dive bomb kind of effect feels, the diving in or pitching up kind of feel. It definitely is lessened. And you go like, well, what about the addition of the other axes with, say, going to a P6 or an H6? It's like, well, for flight sims, you don't use, sway very much at all. It's usually pitch or roll. The surge is nice for like when you're doing the launch and things like that, or a catapult launch. But again, you're not really using that a lot unless you're doing like takeoffs and landings, right?
So, right. Well, I'll give you my point after you go through yours, but yeah.
So you can get a lot of the same type of feeling and effect you would feel in the H6 as you would on the H3.
Right.
You save a lot more money. You'll have more rotations and roll, and pitch. And that is generally like how I would look like if someone was really going for a flight. Whereas the H6 to me is actually much better for racing.
Right.
Because now you have sway, and sway is an element along with pitch and roll depending on the track. You have surge, which is felt all the time in racing, of braking, gear shifts, and everything else. And though yaw isn't big, if you're doing drifting, boom, yaw is there. You have it.
Right.
So someone really, like the true honest answer for me is the H6 or these types of platforms or an H6 or a 6-axis is great for racing. Is it needed for flight? It's not needed depending on what you're really doing. What's more important for flight than anything else is it being smooth.
That's true.
Right? And the moment it's not smooth, it breaks the immersion if it's jarring or jerky or things like that. So the better the smooth you can make it, the better of experience you'll have with flight sims.
Ow, I gotta run.
He's on me. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, he can take the bite out of me.
He's on me.
Oh.
He's on me.
I gotta take a pill. Hold on. He hit me pretty good.
Oh,
I'm coming. I might have an arrow stuck in me.
Whoa! Yeah.
Yeah, he's off here.
Oh.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's got to be close. Do I got an arrow stuck in me? Because I thought I saw one fly right at me.
No, I shot him once in the leg.
Okay, good.
So anyway,
So that's
the combo. So that's how I look at it, right? An H6, if you really want the best experience for racing, you get an H6. Will an H3 do a good job? Of course. If you want the best experience for flight, an H3 will be more than enough. Would it be better as an H6? That's debatable by me.
So
Right?
my counter to that is for the H6, and this is where you and I vary a little bit. I love the heave of when you're landing. I mean, it's pretty much just when you're landing, or turbulence really is the only time the heave, I think, plays in, right? That's pretty much it.
Yeah, you're right. Heave is a major one.
But
so I
landing,
did leave that out. But
landing on that carrier, and even hooking up to the shuttle on the carrier, the catapult, getting that bump is so immersive to me.
It's awesome.
So for me,
heave is the huge one.
For me, heave is a big necessity, and then I actually really like the surge a lot. Not only for catapults, but when I'm flying, I actually use that a lot on my throttle. I can tell when I've gone into afterburn. It's just another cue.
Yeah.
So I actually really appreciate the surge. So for me, but I cheated. So because what's the H3s are basically 20. Oh shit, another dog. All right.
Or $2,500.
No. They're like 20 degrees of freedom, so 10 each way. Is that basically what they're claiming?
For the H3s?
Yeah, H3s. Isn't that what I saw?
I think it's about, or 50. It's actually, it's.
Watch out. There's a dog over there. There's a dog over there by that fence to the south. He's coming through the fence. He might have walked off.
Oh, I'm going over here then.
Yeah.
Yeah,
see him? He's right by that fence line. Southwest.
Oh yeah, no,
I think he's going away, but so we're okay. Anyways, so for me, for flight, again, I cheated because I think what I remember, the H3s were supposed to be 21. Well, I inverted those triangles on my H6, and so now I actually get 21 degrees of pitch. Out of mine.
I mean, you can modify, you can start going down that road, and I can make the argument is that. The fact that did you have an H3 ever?
No, I never did. So that's why
So it's hard.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have the comparison, but also the thing I always say is like once you feel a certain effect,
right?
It's hard to ever go back without it. So since you felt surge and you felt what that can feel like, and heave, it's hard for you to ever give that up again because you felt it. It's the same thing with motion competition.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. True.
And what I'm getting at is like if someone wants to get into it,
I see.
And they really want to do flight and that's it, an H3 is more than enough for what you need to do. And if one day you want to upgrade, you can do that.
That's the beauty of it. Yeah.
But don't let someone tell you that, well, if you're going to do flight, you have to start with an H3 or P6. It's like, I don't agree with that.
No,
if someone's like, want to start racing, you can get those. But I'm like, if someone's like, well, you don't need an H6 for racing, I'm like, you're wrong. Because it will feel so much more realistic in an H6 or a P6 than an H3 when you're racing.
Look how much fun Steve, VR Flight Sim guy's having just with his H2.
Yeah.
He's loving it because he's never known anything different.
Because that's pitch and roll. That's what I always go into. Like with certain types of games and sims and racing, even there are certain axes, certain effects that are more predominant that you would think you would feel in those. So like a roller coaster sim, it's pitch and roll all the time. Right. But the same thing pretty much with flight sims, it's pitch and roll. You can make an argument for yaw, but it's like, when are you really cranking down yaw that hard in an aircraft except for high winds and all that other stuff? That's
the irony of the whole yaw too. Yaw is one of the least important axes to me.
Exactly.
It's fun when you're on the deck of the carrier and you're turning and trying to drive on the deck to get to the catapult. The yaw kicks in. That's kind of fun. Yeah, it's that little bit, but okay, it's not Horde Night, so we're good.
Okay, cool. If you have DCS and one day when it's on sale and you like to have fun, you need to buy the the SA-32 Gazelle helicopter.
Would you recommend that or the Apache? Because I want to get one of them.
If you want to have like a military kind of easier to fly, classic combat helicopter experience, you get the Apache, right? Okay. If you want to feel like you're a freaking bumblebee, flying like mad speeds, low level, stopping and just crazy stuff and hardcore yaw. That's when you'll feel it in this fight. That helicopter.
Yeah.
The SA-32A, I can't remember.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
The Gazelle.
Yeah.
Is just insane. Right? It's a squirrely little, but it's a copter that they would use to do like those special ops and it flies that way. And you're like, whoa! But if you want a more, so it's like, that's like a little tiny go-kart, like, and fun and crazy. But if you want like the combat experience, H64, it's like a tank.
So any plans to upgrade to H6? So Jeff's he actually had a P6.
Yeah, a P6.
So he's had them both. And Jeff's actually got, depending on how much money you got, Joe, if you really want to have the flight experience, you got to get the actuator. Well, you need two things. You need a lot of money, and you need some space.
Well, it's getting there. It's like we were talking about before. Like you can start off with a 4 or 3 actuator 3 DOF system for like $4,000, right?
We're talking like
which is middle.
PT, what are you talking?
Well, this would be like what is that dog doing? Do you see it twitching over here? Oh, that's freaky.
No, I don't, and I don't know that I want to. Speaking of, make sure my guns are loaded.
Oh, I can skin it.
Oh, yeah, it's dead.
But do you see it moving?
No, it's just sitting there on mine.
Oh, that's weird. Okay, that's disturbing. Anyway. So I had a P3 when I first started, and then I upgraded that to a P6. And I had the P6 for a long time, and then I got an actuator platform. And then I sold the P6 because I had the 60 DOF actuator platform. Then I worked out stuff with Igor at DOF Reality to get the H3 because I'm also working with Simulation Studio to be able to test stuff and whatnot. All right. And that might upgrade one day to an H6, but I need to do a lot of tunings for it on to update all my tunings for the SF gears and some other stuff that needs to be updated on all of the older tunings.
The big question, Joe, would be, I'd ask, like, if you're talking flight sim, what type of flying are you thinking? Are you talking general aviation where you're in a Cessna kind of cruising around in an airliner, or are you talking combat jets, that kind of stuff? Because that's a big difference too.
Yeah.
On, again, the smoothness that comes into play. But what I found, I'm infected.
The one thing I will put on this too, it's like I always argue this too. If you have the funds, go 60 UF every time. It's the same idea as like, every piece of that motion adds to the immersion, right? And I'm not saying that an H6 is bad for flight. The question is would an H3 be good? Good enough. It's like, it's more than good enough. Right.
Yeah, especially if you've never done it. I've never had a P or an H6. And then, Joe, once again, I think we've had this discussion before. From what I understand, you don't need a P-Series. You can get away with an H-Series. Don't spend the extra money on a P-Series. It's not worth it anymore.
It's not worth it. No.
And
even back when I had it, it's not. And the only difference it used to be was advertised for commercial applications. The only difference was the motors had like a removable magnet, like for the brush drive in the back in case it ever got really worn out.
Okay.
Right? Well, that's like, you would have to have like people using your motion platform every day for like 2 to 3 years before it would get worn out. So I would always recommend, I need to be careful with what I say because this is broadcast, but I recommend for someone that wants to get an H3, unless you're, using commercial application, honestly, unless you're a business having people use the motion platform, no one needs a piece.
If you're opening up an arcade, if you're opening up a virtual reality arcade, then yes, you would consider doing the P-Series. Otherwise, do not buy the P-Series. You don't need to spend the extra money. That money, there's so much money to be spent on motion platforms. Spend that money elsewhere.
Use it elsewhere. Yeah. And again, just to credit DOF because need to be diplomatic. It is. They list it as a professional commercial grade one, so it's like it's not gonna. I bought it and I should have gotten an H3 back in the day. It's not that different.
And my early videos I talked about it just because the P-Series was allegedly had the more motion, and that was the only option for more motion. And now with the SFU gears, it counters that. So the only reason I would have ever considered the P-Series was it allegedly got more motion out of it. Well, now you don't need that because of the SFU gears. So he's worried about the weight because he says he's right at 300 pounds, and we've had this discussion too, Joe. I've had heavy guys in mine, and it doesn't even remotely get the motors hot with these new gears, with the new SFU gears. 300 pounds is not going to be an issue for you. And again, if it is, put some temp strips on there. Keep an eye on it, but if you're right at 300 pounds, now if you're telling me you're 350 or 400, you know, they're talking different. But if you're right at 300, which is the claimed weight, I wouldn't worry about it. Those H motors can be fine because again, I've had some big boys in my simulator, and we've run them through roller coasters and run those motors pretty hard, and they don't overheat. I got more overheating, you know, especially if you put the gas struts. You might want gas struts on there for that, but that'll compensate because the gas struts I think are rated for what 200 pounds or something each. So
they're there's something they're hard. I mean, they're strong.
Yeah,
and so you know I've had people up to like 290 on mine, I think.
And any issues at all? Or?
No major issue. No,
yeah.
I mean the only thing you might notice is like the motion might be a little bit not quite as fast as it was for someone that's lighter.
Right.
And the one thing you can do is if you're really concerned, is you tune the motion down. Right. So like before someone gets into it, you can go to the tuning menu in Sim Racing Studio, and at the very top where it says max angle, just lower that down to like 50 or even like 25.
One setting, one slider.
Yeah, one setting. And you just move that down to 50 or 25, and then boom, it won't move as much, and it should be able to, because that's going to be the issue. Like the platforms are balanced, so you can have a lot of weight there if everything's balanced. The moment you off balance it by turning left and right, you need to move it back to center. Well, the issue becomes inertia, right? And if it's moving left and right and then suddenly has to move over to the right to left, that extra weight and inertia needs to be moved. The less motion moving left or right, the less inertia has to be moved back and forth. Therefore, it'll move a little bit quicker, if that makes sense. So you can reduce the motion down to 25 if someone's, rather heavy on that. And that way, two things. One, the motion should stay relatively quick. And two, it won't cause as much stress on the motors because they won't have to go extend as far with that additional inertia of weight and then have to move it back the other direction really quickly.
Yeah, and Joe, and I'm at my heaviest, I was 254 when I was on my motion sim. So I mean, I was a little lighter than 300. But if I was 300 pounds, I would not even think twice about getting an H series with the SFU gears. It would not concern me in the slightest. I would not worry about that at all. So that's just my personal opinion. But because you got guys now adding super huge monitors to their DOF rigs and stuff like that. You got people overloading. I mean, think about this. Some of those direct drive wheels that people are putting on there are 40 pounds and stuff. So people are loading these things up now with a lot more weight. Now, if you do get a 3 series or a 2 series, or we'll just say if you get an H2 or H3, balance is key. You do want to make sure it's balanced on one of those because that could get you into overheating an engine or one of the motors if it's severely out of balance. But you need to balance those anyways. I mean, that's part of the setup is balancing the rig.
Yeah, and that's just general maintenance, right? I think that's another thing that's not really communicated really well to the motion simulator community in general is these are basically like race cars, right? I mean, everyone is doing a simulation of a race car or a fighter plane or an aircraft.
Or a roller coaster.
Or a roller coaster. And I guarantee you, every single one of those things goes through maintenance way more often than your regular car, right? And so it's not like I'm saying like maintenance on the motion simulator, but especially for DOF platforms, like everyone should be going through and rechecking their bolts every week, if not 2 weeks for the first few months, and then once a month for a few months, and then after that you can get regular scheduled stuff.
Yeah.
And then the same thing, and that really includes a big thing for the U-bolt, the U-joint on those models is just making sure everything is tight and stays tight. Because again, these are motion rigs, and they're named motion, and they're shaking, and things get loose. And when things get loose, things stretch, things stop working well. So one, maintenance is key. Two, with the DOF Reality is calibration. It's the same thing as like if you're a race car. After the race, you take it to the garage and you tune it up again, get ready for the next race.
You got a sword bench, by the way, not to interrupt.
People need to like tune their sensors and adjust and check and make sure everything is still calibrated, still balanced. And then three, realize that again, these are emulating race cars, or emulating fighter jets. And oftentimes those will be stripped down, whether it's a suspension or whatnot, or they replace it, a landing gear strut or whatever it may be. you don't want to emulate that kind of harsh motion in your motion platform because you don't have the same crew coming in to change your motors, your struts, your actuators or whatever.
Unless you got unless you got Daryl, then you're good.
Yeah. So motion can be fun, but be careful with how extreme you make it. Be careful with how fast and how wide it's shaking. Because again, it's, these are still just mechanical machines, and eventually they'll break if they are just not maintained. So there's my public service announcement.
There you go.
Anyway.
But yeah, hopefully that
but
helps.
that's like stuff we can talk about in the next video that we do.
So let me make sure he didn't have any other questions. There's your sword. Did you get it? Oh God, of course.
Wait, did you drop it?
Yeah, it's right on that. See it on that seam? I can pick it up again if you can't see it. It's like right on this floor seam, right?
Ah, wow! It's like it was on its knife.
I know. I was like, so we ought to go. I guess. Do we need to go run and get that airdrop? Or do you want to just mark it and then
let's mark it and get it later.
Yeah, because I think dinner's getting close.
Yeah.
What do we got for food? So that's what I would say. Okay, so Joe says, so the 6 Series is better for racing. It was my understanding the 3 Series was preferred. I mean,
like mine's very controversial. Mine's very reversive. Probably 90% of what you would hear. But I'm also someone that's experienced everything. So
it depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah.
If you have never done a motion simulator, you're going to be blown away by 2 degrees of freedom. I mean, if you've never experienced it, it's going to amaze you. No matter. I mean, the thing that's interesting. So you have Jeff here. I don't know how many people have actually done the full upgrade, gone to the H2, H3, and then 6. So there aren't a whole lot of people that have truly tried both.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't even. I mean, I've only used the H6. That's all I've ever had. But I know the experience is amazing in it. So, so it's
again, I would always say, and this is the biggest thing I would say to anyone listening is there's not a definite, like, this is what you should get for this type of stuff. The bigger question comes into what is your budget and how much do you think you're going to be getting into this hobby, right? If you're not really sure and it looks fun, then just get an H3 or an H2, play with it, and you can always upgrade it at a later time. That's the coolest thing about a DOF Reality platform.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what I did. So if you're like, money's not an object and I want the best experience, then you go right to an H6, or you'd want to go even higher up to more money onto an actuator platform. Yeah. Right? But that's how I would explain it. And it's like, if it's like, oh my gosh, if I get an H3, am I really not going to have a great experience? And it's like, no. It's like the same thing I would tell anyone, my favorite analogy. It's like, does someone who races GT3 racing or, kart racing, do they have less fun than someone who's racing F1? Right? They're just different types of experiences, and they're both a lot of fun. Once you experience having an H6 like Mark has and all those degrees of freedom of movement, it's like, wow, this is really cool. I want this, right? And then that's the choice you have of how much money do you want to spend in this hobby. Exactly. So that would be the thing. Like, whatever you decide to get, especially if it's light, I can honestly say you will be absolutely happy with an H3. Right? You're not missing anything with an H6. If one day you wanted to go to an H6 and feel those extra motions and stuff, and you're really committed to the hobby, then there's an upgrade path for you, which is just a little bit more than what you would normally pay if you went to an H6 in the first place.
Yeah, it's really not that much more. I mean, at the end of the day, the biggest thing is the work you'd have to, you're going to basically be dismantling and building. So that's also another thing. But it sounds like you're a DIY guy because you're doing all this stuff around the house. So you probably wouldn't mind that at all. So, and I personally, I mean, I it's hard to say because I have never done the H3, but I can't imagine giving up those axes of movement that I love so much. Because I think you're exactly right. I would miss them. I'd be like, well, there's no certain. Yeah. I mean, I'd be like, it's not setting me back. I don't feel that subtle shove first, front and back. And the catapult launches for sure. That's one of my favorite parts. And then the heave. Again, when you come in and I love the heave because you come in and you have a hard landing, you feel it. If you have the heave set like I do, stupid hard, you feel when you touch down. You feel like you've touched something solid. When you're
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how else to describe
incredible.
it. It's
right?
an amazing
and
experience.
That's where one day I'm going to get you an Actuators platform.
Yeah,
One
of these days I'm coming up.
Because you can't imagine how much better it'll be, but it's like it's there, right?
Yeah.
There's like even more detail. But again, it's just like, it's that, like you said, once you experience it, it's hard to go back. It's the same thing with VR, right? From a lot of people, once you experience VR, it's hard to go back.
Yeah.
Many of the times, the reasons why people don't do it is because it makes them sick, or there's family, or et cetera. But no one's like, oh yeah, VR I hated the experience because I felt like I was actually in the car, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
It felt like I was really doing this thing.
Then you throw in motion compensation, you can't go back. Then you throw in a shaker kit, you can't go back without having it feeling the shake. You throw the wind, I want to feel the wind. And then even for me, like, I have the active belt kit. It's like the moment you feel the belts tighten up when you're racing and going around a corner, the next time you don't feel that, you're like, what's going on?
So we got one more thing. So I'm going to, because Joe doesn't know what he just did, but I'm going to go ahead since you're here. Here was the comment. I want a DOF that stands 2 stories high, American Airlines Training Center style, no dollars, like a champagne taste, cruise like budget. So I think you have an opinion on those very large simulators, don't you, Jeff, in relation to the smaller? Don't you have something to say about that?
It's one of those things again, the industry has a lot of hype around it, right? Especially the motion platform manufacturers. And I know a number of them. And the hype is built around feel the G-forces, right? Feel, as real as it can get. Well, the simple problem is you can never really feel these G-forces for real, right? Yeah. It's just like you can't generate a sustained 3Gs in a motion simulator unless you're doing like centrifugal force and all this stuff. By that time, and there's other issues that you run into in terms of other effects. So one of those answers that people think is like, oh, I'll just build a giant motion simulator and I can move all over the place, and because the bigger the better, right? Because then I'll really be able to generate G-forces. The problem with that is always the concept of telemetry in the game. And the telemetry of the game is moving so quickly, it's emulating the motion of a car or an aircraft. Now think about this. When you're sitting in the car or the aircraft and you're feeling those G-forces, how much are you really moving around in space, like in a 3D kind of thing? It's trying to create these motions and effects, but what it's going to do is it's going to over-exaggerate it the larger you get. So meaning, if all of a sudden in a real-life experience in a motion simulator, to create the real effect of feeling like you're going over a bump, might move the simulator maybe 3 centimeters at most. Right? Very similar to what the bump in the road might be, like 3 centimeters high, like, 3 inches high or something like that. And that's what the simulator will try to do to emulate what that feels like. Well, what happens when you suddenly no longer have an actuator that's only moving 30 centimeters, but you have this giant motion platform that wants to move you 3 feet in the same amount of time? It's going to feel extremely jarring, right? It's going to literally be moving you 3 feet versus 30 centimeters in like 1 second, and you will probably die because the G-forces will probably be around like 9 Gs or something. So it's that idea, like, well, can't you use that effect for other effects? Like, well, what other effect? If, like, say if it had a lot of ability to move from side to side really far, so you can, I can emulate really good, strong G-forces that way. Again, the telemetry that comes from the games and the sims are very quick and very low, and they aren't sitting there calculating out how it's going to move a simulator that's large to make it feel realistic. Because you will always still run into those issues of whether it's aircraft telemetry or car telemetry, where it's quick and it moves around very fast. And so trying to have more length of a motion simulator is actually more detrimental because it causes more issues of jarring motion because you're trying to move greater distances in exactly the same amount of time.
You don't have the resolution that...
Yeah. And that resolution, but it always comes back down to the time and the telemetry that is coming out, sometimes at 60 times per second, right? And it's like the vehicle, again, when it goes over a bump, is up and down or left and right when you're going through a corner. Those spikes in G-forces, again, are represented very quickly. So you go, well, if I'm going around a corner and it's 9 Gs, won't it sustain that way? It's like the spike in telemetry will say that it went high, but it's going to become a maintenance because it's no longer climbing as an increase of G-force. It sustains. It's just how the telemetry works from the game. And then when you try to emulate that in a larger rig, again, it'll just move you too far left and right in a very short amount of time, because it has to catch up with the next telemetry coming, and therefore you'll just be rocked around violently. And this is already an issue with people that usually go to 250, 300, 600 millimeter actuators rather than staying around 100, 150. Is that now, oh yeah, you have 250, so if you just proportionally try to increase everything up, again, everything's going to feel too jarring because now you're moving this extra distance in the same amount of time. So, in theory, and what looks cool are large motion simulators, but in reality, you don't want to have that much motion because you can't utilize it, and you will end up just moving the motion simulator on this giant rig very small. Do you see those giant industrial things? They are literally for aircraft simulators and things like that, just to kind of have a giant cockpit in it, so they can,
right? So you can,
have the crew in there, and they don't have to use VR.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
That's the only reason they have them. Or the other giant ones you see are for, oil rigs or other scientific things where they need to keep the item very level, right? And that's where a hexapod system comes in really well, because it's a very easy system to align something in any kind of degree of motion within 3D space on a hexapod system. But, that's another discussion as to which one is better for a motion simulator.
Welcome to Motion Simulators.
Podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
Forever about this stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's good.
Again, going back, my thing is I want people to have fun, right? And I don't really try to align myself with any manufacturer. And I think there is a disservice because I was under that presumption as well that you have to have an H6 to do flight. And it's like, that's not true. You can start off with an H3, you can have a great time, and then go to an H6, right? What I'm saying is, it's not an analogy of anyone that bought an H6 is wrong. It's like you could start off with having a breakfast. Yeah, you can start off with having something small and then go large. That's the great thing about it.
Yeah.
And you're not going to have less fun. It's still just as fun. But that was the big realization for me. I create all the tunes, I do all the different stuff, and going from an H3 to the P6 or the P3 to the P6, it's like, man, I wish I still had that degree of motion in the roll and pitch axis like I used to have. But I did find, like you said, that with heat and whatnot, it felt a lot more realistic racing. Mm-hmm. So, I did not have SFU gears at the time, so there was other issues back then too. I
got loot out here if you want to come get it.
Oh, cool.
I've been killing zombies while you've been talking, so.
Really?
Which is good. We've got a whole bunch. Everybody's showing up now. We've been trying to end the stream, but that's cool. Appreciate everybody coming by. Jay's here. I'm trying. Hold on, I gotta get safe because I'm gonna get killed because I'm hurt. Let me get up safe before I start looking at the chat. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, and again, you're lucky here because Jeff is about as expert as you can get in this stuff. He's worked it a lot in both creating the software and in the usage. So. It sounds like a squeaky toy. All right, so let's see. Know Your Joe says, does that catapult launch cause the H3 to lean back? Yeah, right. Catapult, you lean back in the H3, right, Jeff?
So what would be I didn't hear the question. What was the difference?
So in an H3, if you do a catapult launch, it leans back, right? Basically pitches back.
Yeah, exactly. So an H3 will convert all surge motion, so that's the forward and backward motion, into pitch. So it'll roll backward and then pitch forward really quickly. Yeah,
I don't know what that one's like, but I know in mine at the surge it's amazing. And our friend Jay, our Australian buddy, who needs to start playing with us. You're supposed to be playing 7 days with us, Jay. What's the first thing you're playing with on your crystal? Likely it will be DCS, just to see the cockpit, followed quickly by Elite Dangerous, because I want to see that dimming, local dimming, big time.
On that note, you should get the AH-64, because if you get the AH-64 in DCS, then we would be able to fly.
I know. I thought about that. Plus an F-14 would be the same thing, but no, I totally thought about the Apache, because we technically, so Jeff and I could be in the same vehicle, and we both have motion sims, so we would be actually experiencing the flight together.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
Be awesome.
I've flown with live Rios, but they weren't in motion simulators. I don't even think they were in VR. And it's just different because you're like grunting and snorting because you get thrown all over, and they're kind of like, yeah, okay. They're not making any noise at all.
Exactly.
All
Did
right.
you feel that? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I had to do a live stream once with him just so he could see what I was going through as we were doing that. There's a copy of that. There's a copy of that on the in the archives too. It's look up the DCS with live Rio or something like that. Anyways, so Joe's asking, the smaller the units, like the H6 or H3, are actually more effective. I would not have initial thought this. So it's not necessarily the 3 or the. You're talking about those giant industrial ones versus the smaller ones. More of a home built one. So I don't know. You can't really say the H3 or H6 is more effective than, like, say, a PT actuator. Those are all. I mean, you're talking. That's a whole nother. We'll have to cover that later because we can't even go there. But you don't really want those super big ones. You don't want. You would, even if you could, you wouldn't want a airline Boeing simulator. So
yeah,
you're talking so much movement. So and the power and yeah. So it's crazy.
It'd be bad, yeah. And it's even when you go and you watch a lot of like the current F1 simulators, the drivers and their teams, or whether it's GT3, there's not a lot of movement there. There's some older ones where they had quite a bit of sway, but the newer ones don't have a lot of motion, simply because they just realized it's just not really effective in terms of one trying to emulate it in a simulator. And that's some of those things that you just have to accept as well. It's like there are certain motions you can't do. You can't emulate G-forces. So anyone starts saying that, it's just, I hate that.
I've been on one simulator that emulated G-forces, and that was at Epcot Center on the mission to Mars, and they're spinning you in a centrifuge.
Exactly.
And it wasn't pleasant.
But I would always describe motion simulators as like, what they can do though is they can create the illusion of motion.
Totally.
Right? And that there's these motion cues you will feel, like when you pull up on the joystick and you're going vertical in a jet, right? Well, the motion platform can't rotate 90 degrees, but what you can do is you can set the motion to where it reaches an apex of around 40 to 50, over slowly a time, to where it feels like you're continuously going up.
Yeah.
Or that when you do a dive, it does it initially so it feels like you're continuously diving because you're still kind of leaning forward. And that's the thing I love, is finding those little tricks so that, like you felt on the aircraft carrier, it took a long time for me to find, like, how you do things in Surge and get in those ranges, so that it would feel like you're engaged in moving forward. Yeah. Right. But hopefully DCS keeps doing better because their telemetry wasn't that great on the carrier, but it's the motion you will get on an H3 or even an H2 or an M2 is infinitely better than no motion.
Than no motion at all. Absolutely.
Exactly. And
again,
and
go
even
watch.
Then I would say,
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the flight sim stuff. The flight sim stuff will even feel better. It feels just as good on an M2 as an H3 because again, that's really about pitch and roll. Right, and then you can start adding the yaw and all that other stuff. But,
and again, it's again, go watch VR Flight Sim Guy. He's never done this before. You can see if you've never done this before, any motion is going to be amazing. And then you build from there. You graduate up. But we got several. So Yosef, welcome. Sorry, we were in the middle. He's from Qatar, so welcome from across the world. Appreciate you stopping by. So thank you. And let's see. So Know Your Joe's asked if the DOF reality is the way to go. That's a whole big topic. What I would say, I have a video on the value why I picked the DOF reality. It really comes down to your budget. I mean, it's a little bit of what you pay for, especially in the smoothness factor once you get away from the DOF style of motors and go to actuators. But how much money do you got? How much money do you want to spend on it? So, again, you can buy motion platforms all the way up to $50,000, $60,000 for the home. Now, what I would tell you, and Jeff, you can tell me if you agree, I would tell you that the DOF reality at the current situation is probably the best value for what you get and what it costs. I think the DOF reality is the best value you can get. I don't know if you agree with that or not, Jeff. I mean, I'm thinking the original yaw is pretty cheap, but it also isn't very good. So, what do you consider the best value in Sims?
I mean, yeah, definitely the DOF, right?
Yeah.
I mean, with the hands down, right? You get into like the different, like what is available out there, right? There's next level racing, and like they're kind of like their new, like their traction loss thing that they're doing, and they also have the two DOF kind of thing for next level racing. But DOF has the same thing for half the price, right?
Right.
Outside of that, you know, there are some smaller motion simulator kind of stuff, companies, but they're all independent, but nothing that's really even cheap. Right. And so you get to that point where like, okay, well, I want to get a motion simulator, and you look online and you'll see some of these places are $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. So yeah, from a perspective of getting into motion, DOF is by far the easiest entry level, especially when you get into like, say the H3. I think that's just one of like the best deals that you could get in terms of motion and what you're going to be using it for. It would last a long time because it's great for flight sims because you'll have the traction loss, which is basically just yaw. So you'll have the rudders and stuff you can do with it. And for racing as well, it's great, right? Yes, it doesn't have those other axes of sway, surge, and heave, but again, you're getting an entry level motion platform, and you will have a great experience with those. I mean, I can't express that enough. And then going up from there to the H3, the P6, I have my own opinions on it now. It depends on how willing someone is willing to do it-yourself stuff, right? If you want to plug and play, I don't want to deal with a lot of it. I still have to assemble it. Maybe there might be little issues, but there's a company there to help support me. The DOF H6 is one of those best values for that.
Especially if you do the mods I did.
Yeah, and you can start modding it. And there's also a thing to say about the community, right? Is that DOF by far has the largest community over any other type of motion platform. The only one that would even come close to it is the SFX 100 community, which are the ones that build their own actuators, right? There's no other platform manufacturer that has a large community just because of the price point for most of them.
And I got to break in here real quick because I appreciate it. This is the first time I think I've ever had a live stream where I've actually had to scroll back up. So thank you guys for all joining in. This has been awesome for me. And if you see me leaning over, it's because my chat is on the other screen and I have to lean over to see it. So Yusuf says he loves my videos, man. Thank you. And he bought his P6 because of me. So
that's awesome.
I hope you don't regret it. We just had a discussion about the P-Series not being as needed as the H is now with the new gears. So, Yosef, I would ask you this. What are you doing? Are you flying or are you racing more? And do you have the SFU gears? Because you're actually perfect for this chat because all the things that you've kind of gone through, Joe is asking us about now. Because Yosef's saying he got the DOF Reality, which is good. And then Joe says, I can get 2 H3s for less than the price of 1 H6, and then I could race a friend side by side. Yeah, that's true. You won't be able to race both. You use both of them, but it's what you're looking for. So that's an interesting question, Jeff. If you were at the point where if you had friends that were into this stuff, would you rather have 2 what's he saying, H2s or H3s?
H3s.
Would you rather have 2 H3s or would you rather have just 1 H6?
2 H3s.
Yeah,
for sure.
Because the community stuff is so fun. I mean, being able to do this stuff with friends, it's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a lot of different ways you can go, and they're all learning experiences. And again, I had a P6 and everything, and so it's the way I always look at it is if you're not sure, you want to get into the hobby. And you're not a hardcore sim racer, meaning that you're not someone that's already put in, $7,000 into sim racing or something. Because if you're that type of person, then you should just go to the max with motion platforms anyway, because I know you'll be hooked. But if you're unsure, yeah, it's like the H3 is definitely the way to go. And then when you get to the H6, it definitely is still great, right? When you want to start moving to actuator platforms and things like that is when you want to do more, right? Meaning that you want to have a larger, more stable or rather rigid cockpit for all of your gear. Because it does make a difference when you're racing if there's any kind of flex. You want something that has a little bit more expandability so you can put in different types of gear using the aluminum extrusion so you can go to an actuator platform. but even with an actuator platform, that's what we were talking about earlier. You kind of get into a 3DOF actuator platform starting at around 4,000 to 5,000, right? So it's always a question of, I will tell anyone, it's like, what is your budget? If it's want to be cautionary, start with an H3 and build up from there, right? It's a great platform. You can have it. You can keep it as a backup. You can sell it. A lot of people buy them. So there's that avenue. If you're a sim racer and you already have direct drives, you have the most expensive flight sim gear, you make custom button boxes, you are into VR or not, but sim racing or sim flight is something that is really a big part of what you do. Save up money and get an actuator platform and spend the money.
As long as you have the space.
Because that's what you'll end up doing. Right?
That's what he's convincing me. So you'll be along my journey if you stay on the channel. He's trying to convince me to come and try his, and then I'm going to be screwed just like all this other stuff. But we'll see what happens. That'll be happening down the road.
I don't want to cause controversy, but this was once said to me, and it's absolutely true.
All right, can you sure? Sorry, we got a lot of stuff people have been asking here.
Go for it.
It's gotten crazy. Sorry, Joseph. Can you sure your DCS SRS setup? I'm not sure what you're asking there. So if you can,
there'd be your motion profile that you use for DCS.
Share. Got you.
Share.
I do share my program. Okay, and you have the P6. Are you using the SFUs or are you using? I need to know what gears you're using because it's going to make a difference. Sorry, I got you. Thanks, Jeff, for that. And just so you know, Joseph, the guy that you're talking to, not right now, but this other voice you hear, he's the guy that does all the profiles, all the stock profiles for SRS. So you kind of got celebrity here. And you have those profiles, right? All they have to do is download.
Yeah, if you have there's two places you can go, right? There's the profiles that I have posted on the old Legacy forum. So if you go to Sim Racing Studio and you go to the Tuning Center, and at the very bottom of the Tuning Center, it'll say Legacy Forums. Okay. You can go there.
We're going to have to start limiting our answers because I still got a page I got to scroll down here. So anyways.
But otherwise, you can find them on the Sim Racing Studio Cloud Share, the shared profiles under Jeff Weaver. And there's ones there for P6, but they'll work on H3s and even the new SFUs. You might need to adjust things, specifically the smoothing, but Sim Racing Studio doesn't also import all the smoothing settings, so it depends. So you might need to do some adjustments.
If you're watching my stuff, all of my videos that are like of the F14, the F18, whatever my videos are, because Jeff chewed me out early on when I started putting stuff on YouTube. He's like, you got to put your profiles on there because it's like seeing a beautiful recipe, a beautiful meal without the recipe. So all of my videos that have the F14, there's a link in there to my profiles. It's just a screenshot of all my settings. But there is a link already on all my videos. If you go down in the description, there's a link to my settings. And again, if you see me leaning over, I'm trying to get through all these things. So, all right. And so Joe wants bang for the buck. DOF Reality is bang for the buck. It's just a matter of if you want a 3 or a 6. Okay, so Jay, our buddy from Australia that should be in here anyways. I don't know why you're not joining us, but whatever, Jay, making me mad. He's probably playing Rust. He's our Rust guy. We missed you, Jay. That's all I'm going to say. Did you see the recent showcase for the modders working on the VR injector for Unreal Engine games? It was incredible. There's been hundreds of 6 DOF VR games coming. I haven't seen the recent one. I know that they're working on that, and in theory, any game that was in Unreal is supposed to be VRable and not like VorpX VRable, but like integrated with controller use and stuff. Do you know anything about that, Jeff? Have you heard anything about that process?
I've heard of it. I know it's a cool project that's being worked on, and the idea, I don't know if it was Unreal 4. I think it's Unreal 4 and Unreal 5. Unreal 4, I think, where it's basically any game that was made in the Unreal Engine will be able to be ported into VR easily.
Yes.
Right? And like the mod, I think, will add in the controller support and be able to figure out things and whatnot, which is really cool if it all comes out.
Because think about all those Unreal Engine games, that would be cool. All right, so we're going to keep going until about 3 a.m. in our game if we still have questions, and then we have to stop because dinner's ready. I'm definitely watching that, Jay. I'm watching out for that. And then Know Your Joe says, does the H3 have SFU drives? I don't remember. Are they all coming with SFU drives now? I don't I don't know.
I know I think the P-Series does. I think the H-Series you still have to buy them or actually add them on.
Just request. And the other thing to keep in mind, not to make your choice any more difficult, Joe, but my recommendation, if you are thinking about starting with, say, an H3 and you eventually want to go to an H6, I would recommend, because they're only doing the SFU gearboxes on the primaries in general, and then the back one for the traction loss, they're typically using the old gearboxes because you really don't need an SFU gear drive for the traction loss. But if you're going to upgrade, you're going to need them all to be SFU drives. So if you're going to upgrade down the road, you might as well just get all 3 SFU gearboxes from the start, is my opinion.
I would tell anyone that's thinking of DOF Reality platform, get SFU gears. Yeah. Just point blank.
Yeah,
I don't care what, if the M2 doesn't come with them, don't buy an M2.
Yeah, don't. Yeah, and you can't upgrade an M2, so I don't think that's the right choice for you anyways. All right, Jay, what else are you saying? You'll be in a great position with the Crystal. Gosh, sorry, man. My eyes are getting bad. To play with lots of multiplayer games. Oh, yeah. For sure. There's so many games I'd be doing with that. And then with the Crystal with room scale, I've got my VR room upstairs, which I hope to start doing some stuff on the channel with, but that's a whole nother opera.
Did you get an email from Pimax? I mean, after your pre-order confirmation, did you get anything that said, like, hey, your X number in line?
No. I never got anything from them unless I missed it, but no. I suppose you did, so you're going to have yours before me, aren't you?
No. Because I heard some people got it, or were notified, but I think they were the ones that ordered day of.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all I got was the email back, like, your pre-orders.
Your pre-orders. Yeah, that's what I got. And I did get that yours was on there. So, okay. And so Joseph, I asked him earlier, what's he doing flying? So, for flying, again, Joseph, you can write what you think of all this, and he may have down here because he's got another thing down below. So, Know Your Joe's asking him about his experience. Perfect. Get you guys talking there. And then Joseph. Oh, geez. Well, I mean, here you go, Jeff. So Joseph from Qatar says, I'm an airline pilot with over 5,000 hours of flying. I have an advanced aerobatic certification and fighter jet-based training. It's extremely difficult to create G-forces in a motion platform. Yeah, as in not possible. So he's far better authority on that. So at the end of the day, did you enjoy it? So, so no, you just said
in terms of flight. Yeah.
So there.
I mean, it's the thing of, like, if depending on what kind of piloting you want to do, right? Like, because I've tuned everything from aerobatic stuff in Flight Simulator, the new one, 2020, DCS. The big difference between, say, like a Spitfire and DCS is a huge difference in, like, saying flying, the P-51 Mustang. Yeah. It really is. And so, I think that's the whole thing with flight sims as well. Again, it really does always come down to pitch and roll. And as long as pitch and roll are really smooth, you'll have a great experience, right? And it's, And I think that the tunings do get tricky, especially, it's not going to be something that you can use. I do have some profiles for aerobatic aircraft, because the telemetry is so spiky, so fast. I mean, they're doing full rolls, 360 roll in less than a second, right? Like, if you just slam it, and do a full roll. Well, the platform itself will try to do stuff like that at times, and it is so crazy jarring. So you have to, like, add additional smoothing. You have to add a higher max telemetries. And though it might feel a little bit deader when you're doing fine-tune stuff, when you're in an aerobatic aircraft in a motion simulator, you have to ride that fine line of still making it fun but not destroying the platform at the same time. Just because the telemetry is so fast. It's so spiky in an aerobatic aircraft. It's insane. I mean, it's so much more than, say, any kind of fighter jet or anything like that. Just the amount of G-forces those guys do. It's crazy. Yeah. So it represents it in these really high spikes in telemetry that will just it's so just like the motion platform's like, what just happened?
Exactly.
It's like, I wanted you to do a full roll in less than a second. It's like, that ain't gonna happen.
So
Joe's to do it, and it can get laggy.
Joe's asking for your giving you a plug here. So do you have a channel? He says, does Jeff have a website yet, or a channel?
It's the Sim Motion Tuning. So it's I don't think I have a link here on yours. I think on the my first interview, I think you might have pulled
Yeah, there is. I
but
think on our tuning interviews, our formal ones, not our playing around ones.
Yeah, so if you just search for sim, like simulator sim motion tuning, you'll find my channel with my platform and my old P6 and videos and tutorials.
Videos
and
are some of the first ones I ever watched before I ever bought anything. So
yeah,
so it's kind of crazy that you and I are you and me both.
Yeah,
it's crazy that now we're talking about this stuff just while we're playing a video.
Yeah,
I would have bet money this wouldn't have ever been a thing. But
same. Who knows? I mean, how it all turned out. But and that's funny. It's like I have so many more videos I need to do. I just haven't gotten to them because. I'm gonna. I mean, maybe it's because it's so overwhelming at times, and it's like that whole creator kind of thing. Like, okay, I need to go in here and I need to do X, right? And X is really, honestly, adjust every single motion profile I have out there, except for iRacing. I think it's the only one I have really what I consider up to date.
Okay.
Because of this is the insider telemetry info. Because the older profiles and older telemetries and things that we used to use for Surge were a singular max telemetry, meaning that you can only have a single max telemetry previously for both acceleration and deceleration, right?
Right.
And though it sounds weird, it's like I had these artificial limits that I had to use, and the artificial limit was almost always skewed towards braking, because braking telemetry is much higher than acceleration telemetry. Well, there was an update quite a while ago where we were able to split out the max telemetries so that you can have a different max telemetry for acceleration and a different max telemetry for deceleration. What that allows me to do in terms of the tuning is to allow for greater adjustability and feeling of surge forward motion when you're racing than I could do before. So I can give a better feeling of moving forward and doing things like that. Previously, because I was limited by this artificial max telemetry setting. So I have to do what I call split surge or split max telemetries for almost every tuning I've done. And then as you go through, like some of my older ones that were made prior to us having smoothing effects, I need to update those as well. So I have a lot to do, but I just need to get my cameras all set up again. I have everything ready to go. I just need to actually it's the lighting I need to do. The lighting was driving me nuts, and I can't. I'm so weird about lighting. I need to get it working right. Anyway, sorry, digress.
Yeah. So Josef's basically talking about how those big simulators, just what we were talking about, how they're kind of slow to come back. Same sim, big move, and then slowly comes back to the natural way. Slowly, however, you still feel like you're in a 30-degree bank. So yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And that's what we were talking, Joe, before I think you popped on here, Joseph, is that you say I want one of those big ones. It's like, well, those aren't really ideal, especially for video games. They're all those have like customized software that are running them. You're dealing with off-the-shelf game telemetry, so it's a whole different beastie. So all right, we got to start wrapping this up. But so let's see. All right, Joe, we got a few more. Let's see, one more question from Joe. So so per your earlier conversation, I understand that there may be an H6 for sale from Mark at Get Your Game On. He is upgrading to a platform. Yes, put me on the list. That will probably never happen because I absolutely love my H6. I'm biased, but I would say I have the best H6 in the world. And Josef, I'm not insulting you because you have a P6, so you're excluded. But all the upgrades that Daryl and I have done, all the work we've done to clearance this thing and make it go to that extra degrees of movement, I absolutely love it. And this thing is rock solid, like Jeff was talking about. You want that solid frame. The upgrades we've done, all the controls are rock solid. I absolutely love my H6. I don't use it right now because we got to get the motion compensation thing figured out because it's just like Jeff said. Once you've used it, it's hard to go back and not have it. So until we get that sorted, I haven't actually been flying that much because I need my motion compensation. So that's what's coming soon. We're going to do a video on it. Jeff and I are going to talk about it. It's just a lot deeper rabbit hole than than I anticipated. I don't know if Jeff might have known it, but I didn't. I thought it was going to be like any of the other stuff we've done. Motion compensation is a whole nother animal, and it's just this deep black hole that just more layers. You uncover this, crap. So
OpenXR. It's just learning OpenXR.
Yeah. So anyhow, so if I do for some reason, if Jeff convinced me I don't need my H6 and I decide to sell it, I will let you know. So on that note, it is 7:03, and No discount codes from DOF Reality generally doesn't do discount codes. Their philosophy has always been keep the price as low as they can and not really do discount codes. I don't know if there might be one out there somewhere, but that generally goes against what they're doing. Yeah, the whip motion. I can't get the whip motion to work on my H6. Can't get it.
Really?
Yeah,
like
I can't.
It's not.
Well, I can't.
Is it not showing up?
It doesn't really work. No, it shows up. I just can't get it to compensate. I mean, it's reading. I'm getting settings. Well, and I noticed. So I was watching Steve, the VR sim guy. He was saying, because I was mostly doing it in DCS. He said his whip motion isn't as effective in DCS. So I don't know what's going on there. I just watched a video of his this morning, and he was mentioning that he doesn't have quite as good results with DCS with the whip motion. And so I'm not sure what's going on there, and we probably need to reach out since we know Steve. But I'm actually working on a controller thing, so I'm going to do the controller tracking because I think that works better for my application because I've got so much more with the Surge and these other axes.
I'll get it working on for you.
Yeah, Jeff and I are going to buckle down, and we're going to get it at least working. Whether I like it more than having a physical tracker that's moving with my rig in every axis, we'll see. But and I can say, I don't have a time frame by any means, but Sim Racing Studios just released their integration of the OpenXR, and that has been a big help. And then, long term, I think they're going to continue to work on the SRS motion compensation stuff. It just might be, who knows, years from now. But I think that's something that they're going to continue to develop. So that's my understanding, at least. So
yeah, we got plans. There's
there you go. Got Jeff here. So okay. So 2 H6s is better than 1 H6. Yeah, of course. And 3 H6s are better than 2 H6s. So
yeah,
so how much
money you want to spend? As many motion platforms as you can.
Yeah.
Actually,
Joseph,
there are some people that have multiples because they have one that's set up for racing and one that's set up for flight.
I could see that. I could totally see that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because just getting in and out of mine is a pain in the ass. Once you're in it, you're locked in, but getting in and out is just because of the wheel and all that. That's a key thing. That was my big thing with the Yacht 2, what I was worried about. I didn't see that as a real good way to get in and out with a lot of HOTAS and all that on there. But anyhow, that's a whole other topic. Okay, thank you for your amazing videos. Joseph, thank you for trusting me enough to actually make a substantial purchase based on what I said, and I hope you're not disappointed. I'm glad to hear you're liking it. And, thanks for coming back, and thanks for spending time with us as well. That's why Jeff and I both do this stuff. It's not for the fame or the glory. It's to share this experience with as many people as possible. That is truly that's what we're into. And then so Joe says, he's saying 2 H3s is better than an H6, correct? And no more questions. Yeah, I mean, I'm selfish, so I want the H6. But it all depends how much fun you want to give to others. For me, I love my H6, but I can honestly say, Joe, you would, having never done this, an H2 or an H3, you're going to be blown away. Especially if you couple that with like the shaker pad, the U-Shake 6 or something, because that'll fill in some of those gaps that are missing from not having the 6 degrees, I would say.
And you could always upgrade.
Yeah,
and that's the beautiful thing,
upgrade. Yeah, exactly.
For the DOF, and even if you get to actuator platforms, it's always upgradable. So my advice is like to get like the H3, see if you like it, see if you want to deal with it all, right? Some people don't. Some people just want a static rig and don't want to have to deal with the motion platform or VR compensation or all that different stuff.
Their loss.
Yeah, but there'll be those like us where you get it and you're like, it's like, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've waited for this my whole life.
Yeah.
Right? And then it doesn't become a matter of like how much things are. And I know you say you won't get an actuator platform one day, but now it's my goal.
Yeah, so. No, I'm willing to try it. I just love my H6. I mean, I absolutely love everything we do. And
that's it.
I love it.
It.
I honestly.
That's why this is the biggest thing, right? I just want to say this. This is the biggest thing. Like, how much you love your H6 is exactly how much people love their H3. Yeah. And it's exactly how much someone loves their M2. Right? It's the whole thing I always try to tell people is like, which platform should I get? It's like, get within your budget.
Yeah.
Because no matter what you get, you're going to have fun. And if you want more fun, it's out there for you. You just spend more money for it and you'll get another access, right?
And like Jeff said, the perfect thing is the cost. If you went out and bought an H6 tomorrow, realistically, if then the next day you bought an H3 and upgraded it, the cost is basically the same. So you're not even really missing out if you want to try the H3 to see what you think. It's not going to cost you that much more. It's literally, I mean, percentage-wise, it's hardly anything.
It depends, and it depends on where you live.
Yeah, right? That's true. That is true.
Like you have to pay shipping
and all that
like,
stuff.
I think at the end I ended up spending an extra $800 versus if I just went away and bought it all.
But you can't go wrong. Yeah, you can't go wrong with it. You can't go wrong. So one of the last things Yosef says, I'm trying to do a special setup to attach the Tension R to the P6. I will keep you updated. Keep me updated because Jeff's also convincing me I need belts.
The tensioner is really cool, man.
And I told Jeff, I'm not doing belts unless I get the best. I'm not going to strap some belts on there. It has to be the Tension R.
And it's the one that, like, once you experience it, it's like, then you miss it, like, when you don't feel the braking. Like, I keep telling people, like, I love the braking effect, but the big one for me was, like, going around corners. Yeah. And just even small corners, you feel it. And it's just enough, again, like I talked about, like, it's creating the illusion of motion. It's just enough to feel that tightening as you're going visually. The motion platform just has a little movement cue. You feel the little bit of the tightening. It feels like you're going around a corner. It's insane. I love it. Anyway, we gotta go.
We gotta go. Yeah, we're already over. But yeah, thank you guys. Thank you guys so much. I mean, again, we were planning on logging off here. Oh yeah, look, it's 3:40. All right,
an hour ago.
I'm gonna end this. Yeah. So, anyways, but we do really appreciate it, and we'll be back again. We'll be back again on Sunday, hopefully, probably with Jeff, and then one of these days we're going to get our whole group together. But thank you guys for everything. Appreciate your support. Appreciate you guys watching. And until next time, remember to, can you say it with me, Jeff? Remember to get your game on. Get your game on. We'll work on that.
Get your game on.
Get some stuff to work on. All right, guys. Catch you later. Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye.